A mathematician turned mom wanted her kids to love math more, so she drew upon Montessori teaching and Asian teaching principles to design a game-based curriculum for her kids that at the time was just supposed to be a complement to their traditional teaching. She turned it eventually into this, a curriculum that is both used by traditional schools and homeschoolers alike. Let me tell you about it. Hi guys, I'm Kathleen Lewis. I'm a homeschool graduate turned homeschool mom to 2 kids, and I would love to show you about Level A for the RightStart Math curriculum. This curriculum, yes, is a combination of a whole bunch of different teaching philosophies, but it works. It uses this instructor's manual with a whole bunch of hands-on manipulatives and games for your kids to learn math. There are worksheets that are very rarely used in the lower grades and used more as you advance through the levels. So I'm going to show you Level A right now. Level A is a bit unique. It can be considered a kindergarten curriculum, but because of its rigor, many first graders might be best placed into this level. However, the first several lessons, and I'll show you this a bit later, but the first several lessons use Montessori math techniques that were designed for preschoolers. So there are some parents out there who just stretch this over 3 years and just take their time with it at their child's level, doing the same games and activities over and over again based on what their child needs. I highly recommend you go to RightStart's website and take the placement test with your kids to figure out which level they're at. What in the world do you get with the curriculum? Well, a lot of stuff, because this is hands-on and game-based. It does come with the teacher's manual, which I'll show you inside a bit later. It also has worksheets. It has a giant book of math games, which you use for all levels in elementary. You can also purchase this. It is the appendix on cardstock. However, this does come in the back of the teacher's book and the back of the worksheet book, so you don't really need to buy the packet separately. Also along with this level is this little book here, Yellow with a Sun. I never really use this with my son. It is just a fun book that you're supposed to sing along to, and there's a tune in the teacher's manual in the appendix. But a way for your child to sing and subitize at the same time, kind of drawing on classical principles. It kind of draws on classical principles. I just can't get that word right. It kind of draws on classical principles too. And then of course there's all the manipulatives, which you only use a portion of each year, but the kit is designed to last you all the levels of the program. So there's a lot of stuff here. How much in the world does this curriculum cost? The book bundle here is about $100. That does include the appendix, the worksheet, and the teacher's manual. The kit behind me is where it gets pricey. It's $218 for all of this, but as I said, you use it for all the levels and you do not need to rebuy it every single year. You can also use it for multiple kids. Is there any way you can save money with this? Yes, get the Super Saver Kit. You can save money by buying this Super Saver Kit, which is a reduced version of the full kit. The Super Saver is about $127 right now, and it includes just what you see. These are some of the harder to source materials. One thing I'm not sure about is if these envelopes are included with the multiplication card deck. But all of this comes in the kit. In addition to all of this, there's a download that you can get that has these pieces right here in a PDF. So you print this off on your own computer. This will be plain pieces of paper that you cut out, hopefully on cardstock. All of these as well have the templates for you to cut out on your own. This right here is what is not in the Super Saver Kit. A meter stick, a clock that is manipulative. You can tell this one in their kit came from Learning Resources. Learning Resources also has this right here, this set of geometric solids. I don't know where you can source a good geometry board that has a circle on one side, but you can buy these pieces individually on RightStart's website. Popsicle sticks and play money should be easy, as well as the calculator. This right here, you can get a geometry expansion kit when your kids get into the upper levels, and that's when you'll be using this. I think this will be the only hard thing to replace because it is so unique, but you really don't use it all that often in the lessons. This is a big investment, so let me tell you who I think this curriculum would work best for, the family and the kid. First, and very importantly, you need a patient teacher. This is a scaffolded approach to teaching math in a different way. So the kid is not going to get it the first time you introduce a concept, and it is designed for the kid to discover these ideas on their own. So if you have a impatient teacher, this curriculum is going to fall apart. So know yourself. Also, if this kid is very reluctant and defiant in wanting to do math, it may not work very well for them either. However, it is very hands-on, so it could be great for the kid who doesn't normally get math via a textbook or paper. These concepts are taught in such a way that kids who don't normally get it with traditional math techniques can probably get it with this. Also, this is a robust and time-intensive program, so if you're wanting something short and simple that you can check off, this won't be the program for you. This particular level has very few worksheets, which is great for the younger learners who haven't built that hand strength yet. As I mentioned already, this is designed for the kids who need something hands-on, so it's really great for the kinesthetic learners, it's really great for the visual learners. Auditory learners, not so much, because as I said, you're expecting the kids to discover these ideas on their own. You're not sitting there giving them a lecture. Final point here, this is a neutral curriculum, so it's not Christian, not secular, just about anyone can use it if it fits their family. Okay, let's do a deep dive into the teacher's manual. Right off the bat on the objectives, you'll notice what I meant about it being an unusual level with going into fractions at the end of the year. Fractions and setting up multiplication and division with some of the things they talk about. At the beginning of the year, you are actually introducing numerals. So it is a spread from the preschool up to even first or second grade concepts. Right here, there's some book suggestions, which this material is not designed around literature, but they're fun supplementals if you so wish to look them up. There's also the supplies list if it's not in the kit, and it's usually things like toys around the house, glue, blank sheets of paper, etc. I highly suggest you read the background information here. And then we get to the table of contents. I want you to immediately notice that there's 132 lessons. And if you divide that by 5 lessons a week, that's only 27 weeks. If you divide it by 4 lessons a week, that's 33 weeks. That is going to fill your year though, because many of these lessons you will need to divide into 2 or even 3 days because of how heavy they are, how challenging the concepts are, or just how much material is involved with it. You'll also notice that there are no chapters, and that is intentional because each of these concepts are interwoven in how they build and are taught cross areas, if I can say it that way. So you have geometry and algebra intersecting with each other and supporting each other as the child learns some of these concepts. There's extra lessons here, so you do not need to do some of these enrichments. And there's also tests scattered throughout, and those are at key points in the concepts. Here's some more enrichments. There's a whole bunch of enrichment at the end of the year. And then all this section here, these are some of the more challenging concepts. And these are here because this is used by schools. And in a traditional textbook, there is always going to be the most challenging content at the end of the year as a filler in case the teacher needs it to finish out class periods. So you don't need to do this if you're doing this curriculum because it will be covered again in the next level and again in the next level until the kids are finally ready to learn about fractions in their years. Also, there is a lot of review at the end of the year before you get to the final assessments, and that is how RightStart does it in just about every level I've seen. Let's take a look at the layout of each lesson by using lesson 67 as an example. At the top of the page, you'll see the objectives for what your child is supposed to learn that day, which is to learn how to partition 10 in this case. And then the very handy materials. This varies day to day. So some days you only use the abacus. Some days you use a lot of stuff, and that's one of the cases today. Let me show you that. This is what we'll need for this lesson here. The AL abacus, which is this. They want you to use the package of tiles. In bold here, they're showing you that this does not come in the kit. So a container to hold tiles. I'll just use the pencil box that I normally put all my need to have frequently tools in, and the child can just use that, so I don't have to get up to get something else from the kitchen. The dry erase board, and of course, pen, and the math balance, the iconic RightStart thing. And you use these with the math balance to help the child visually see 2 plus 8 equals 10, and that's one way you can partition 10. Lastly, they want you to use worksheet number 19, and the answers for that worksheet are here in the teacher's manual. There's a lot of fancy ideas out there on how to store your manipulatives, but honestly, you don't use that many on a weekly basis. So for the frequent stuff, I just threw it in this small pencil box. And if it's been a while since we used it, I just threw it back in this big tote. Some of the pieces like this that you do use more often, I'm going to keep out with the abacus. But that's about it. And if there's something unique that I need to pull out for that week, I'll just go get it out of my box as part of my prep. At the beginning of the lesson, you always start with a warm-up. This is not a memorize it program. This is a program for your child to see visually and then to get hands-on activities to figure out information. But the warm-up here is going to be where you get hands-on drills to learn the information. So it's not a memorize it math program, but they do use drills on content. So ask the child to say the days of the week and months of the year, teaching them calendar. What comes after 4? 5. What is 4 plus 1? 5. What comes after 7? 8. What is 7 plus 1? 8. And then do you see a pattern? Yes. This is reinforcing what she learned in a previous lesson. You can skip this warm-up section if your child already has mastered the content. So this is one way to shorten the lesson. Then we get into new material. The first thing they have you do here is counting tiles, taking a handful of these tiles, lay them on a surface, and have them pick them up one by one and drop them in whatever container you are using. That way you can count as you put in the container, and then the child writes the number, or you can be a scribe for your child to write the number. This is a reinforcement of a concept that they were talking about in a previous lesson. It's just another way to look at it. Now we finally get into partitioning 10, and that's where we get this whiteboard out and use the RightStart method of a big circle at the top and the factoring portion at the bottom, using the part whole teaching method to teach that 7 plus 3 equals 10. Then we finally get to partitioning on the math balance, so we can see that we can take away any part of the equation here and it is not balanced, it is not equal. You do the same thing with the abacus, using reinforcements from 3 different methods here to teach the same concept. Finally, you see if the child has mastered the material and have them do the worksheet. At this point in the lesson, I may step back and say, does my child actually need extra practice, or has he mastered the content? If he does need extra practice, then I would give him the worksheet. And then instead of having him write, I would again be the scribe, and he can use the abacus, he can use the part whole method, he can use the math balance instead of just using this, because again, you want to utilize RightStart's powerful physical materials. And at the end of the lesson, you do a review trying to reinforce all the different ways you can make 10. So there is a lot of repetition built in here, a lot of different ways to look at the same concept. There's 2 more things I want to mention. This section here is new in the 2nd edition, and this is really the only thing different from the 1st edition to the 2nd edition, the explanation section, where it gives useful tips that are out of line of the teaching here so that it's easier for you to find. Also, occasionally you'll find QR codes, and that is different from the 1st edition as well. That was a very heavy lesson I showed you. So how much time does it take to do this curriculum every day? It varies. It can be anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour for one lesson, and that also depends on your child and the specific lesson content. But I highly recommend you get yourself a timer. A visual timer really helps, and set a time limit for how long you'll be doing math that day. Depending on your kid, anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. And if you don't finish the content, you just stop where you are and pick it up the next day. So this is why the 132 lessons in this book will take you the entire year, and actually you may not be able to finish one level. So the extra hard stuff at the end is okay to skip. The other thing you may be wondering at this point is, how easy is this curriculum to use? Is it open and go? Not exactly for newbies. Once you learn the teaching style and method, you can do open and go. You just grab your frequently used stuff or have the giant box of everything that's handy that you can just dip into if you need something extra. You grab the teacher's manual and you're good to go. But I would highly recommend you preview for the week what you'll be teaching. It may take you 5 minutes, it may take you 20, depending on how familiar you are with their teaching style. It is drastically different from traditional methods out there because it uses Montessori principles, because it uses the Singapore style math teaching as well. I referenced earlier that a lot of these concepts are taught interwoven and intertwined with each other. And I'm about to show you how that flows through the curriculum. But before I do, if this content has been helpful for you so far, be sure to bump that like button and let me know it. Here's the beginning of the book, and this is one of the first things I want to show you, how the content here is actually very easy in preschool. And it uses a lot of Montessori materials. So here you're subitizing 1 through 3. And then in the warm-up, you're going to continue teaching yellow is the sun and more subitizing. And here you're going to continue subitizing in the warm-up, but now you're going to move on to sorting. So you have new material that you're moving on to while you're still mastering concepts in the warm-up section. And that continues. Subitizing 5, so a new number to subitize. And then now you have more patterning with more of that warm-up review. So doing ordering while still subitizing and learning your numbers here. Subitizing, and now we're doing tally marks. Now we're introducing some geometry concepts while still subitizing in the warm-up. And it keeps going and going. You're learning a lot of different geometry and math principles while you're still learning your basic numbers and quantities. That keeps going, and you stop that finally in lesson 20. This is going to be the first time you do not have subitizing. In lesson 67, I showed you how the curriculum teaches one concept from multiple different angles. Let me show you how it intertwines concepts to create a really robust curriculum. So this is the first time you are introducing your child to partitioning 5. You use the abacus and you use your fingers to split 5 into different piles. And also notice that this is an introduction to addition already. Very simple and easy introduction. You then move on from using the abacus and your fingers to being introduced to the part whole circle set by just using the big tiles in there. So it's using the concept of subitizing that they're already familiar with, and they have to figure out the missing part. Lesson 34 is where we start introducing word problems. Morgan has 5 dog treats. We put that up in the top. And he gave 4 to Daisy. How many does he have for Flash? Now we finally use numbers in our factoring, in our additions, in our subtraction problems. But the child doesn't know that they're doing all those things. Much later in lesson 78, you're partitioning 50, and it's taught the same way. You start with the abacus. You build off of what you know with 5 and 4 and 1. Now you add the zeros and do the same thing with the abacus with the part whole. So the child can see visually how 5 and 50 are related with the partitioning. Then finally in lesson 85, you give a name to what you've been teaching the child since lesson 32 with partitioning and factoring. 4 plus 1 is the same thing as 1 plus 4. And then in lesson 95, they've been building subtraction skills throughout the book. But now is when you finally start writing the equations and seeing how addition and subtraction are related using the part whole method. This is really amazing because it lays great foundation for algebra and adding and subtracting positives and negatives all the way in 8th grade math. But its foundations started here in their kindergarten or 1st grade level. Quickly, I want to show you what the assessments look like for this level. It is all verbal from use. There's no physical tests, and it's just doing various activities, kind of like a review, to make sure that the child knows everything. There's an assessment checklist in the appendix back here. So you can just use that as your documentation for whether or not the child has met the goals for what you wanted them to learn. So that is a lot of details I just gave you. There's a lot to this curriculum. It's very robust. Let me summarize everything in a pros and cons list for you. First on my list of strengths or pros is it uses games, not flashcards, to drill. Many kids just shut down when you get out the flashcards to drill them on their math facts, but you turn it into a game and they'll engage with you a lot longer and you're having fun at the same time. Second big strength for this curriculum is its emphasis on place value, which is a key thing for kids to learn, because if they don't know about ones place, tens place, and hundreds place, and have that concept really nailed down, the addition and subtraction when they get to the middle grades is going to be really hard for them because they'll start mixing up what they need to subtract from and add to. Another strength is that it teaches strategies for math concepts and shortcuts rather than just having your child memorize facts. And this is possible because it is in depth. It is foundation up in how your child understands how these concepts work. I think the biggest strength of this curriculum is how the concepts are strategically explained and developed so that the more challenging concepts later are much easier for a child to grasp. And I showed you that with the development of the 5 partitioning and the addition and subtraction, how they're connected, and how you can see subtraction as the missing addend, which is a concept that kids have a really hard time grasping when they meet high school math. Of course, with every curriculum, there's going to be some cons. So the biggest one here is going to be the cost because of all this great hands-on material behind you. But I wanted to put something in perspective for you. If you're willing to commit to doing this for all 8 levels with one child, that is going to be a total of $936 for the 8 levels. And per year, that works out to $117 per year for your child. That is reasonable when it comes to homeschool math curriculums. Go further and add a second child for all 8 years, and that is $68 per kid per year if you commit. However, it is a big commitment because, as I said, this kit behind me is pricey. Another con is all the stuff to keep up with. Because you're looking at something from multiple different angles, it is going to be a juggling act for you with materials. So if you're prone to losing things or get stressed when you have multiple things going on at once, this may not be for you. Another con does correlate with one of its strengths. I mentioned it doesn't have a whole lot of worksheets, but there's a heavy teacher involvement here. So expect to spend a lot of your time with your child on this. I mentioned this already, but because the techniques of teaching is so different from any of the curriculums out there, there is a huge learning curve. So if you're not willing or not able to commit to learning a new method of teaching math, this won't be for you. As mentioned earlier, this is a robust and challenging curriculum. So while it may start out easy, it may not line up with other curriculums out there on grade levels, so be sure to take the placement tests online. And finally, the lessons can be incredibly long, especially if you're working at a level too hard for your child or trying to go too fast and they're not ready to move on to a concept. So definitely set timers and figure out what level's best for your child. Quickly before I go, I wanted to address gifted kids out there. Will this curriculum work for gifted kids? Yes. I think it's actually one of the better math curriculums I've seen for gifted kids. And that is because of how fundamental it is with teaching the concepts instead of just drilling math facts. The child actually gains a deep level of understanding of these math concepts. However, because of how it teaches, I think you're going to have to make heavy modifications. I have never used the math games because, again, those are drills. And while my son may find them fun, I didn't have enough time to do all of them with him. And some of them he just found bored when I tried them. I also eliminated most of the warm-ups because gifted kids, latch on to concepts fast. So he didn't need all that review. I eliminated a ton of the worksheets because by the time I was done teaching, he had the concepts, so he didn't need to do it. And a lot of this was scaffolded material, so I had to combine several lessons into one and just teach everything in one lesson and instead of breaking it apart into 3. So tips for you if you want to use it for your gifted kid. If you guys got any questions for this curriculum, drop those down in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them for you.